Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to Diana Emerson. Today we're listening to Leader of the Pack.
Good evening, I'm Anthony Robart. This is Crime Beat, the stories behind some of Canada's most high-profile homicides, told by the reporters who walk the beat every day, and the families demanding answers. We reveal the shocking evidence as it was uncovered by investigators in their quest for justice. Tonight, a bright young girl who was loved by her family and friends, a natural leader, disappears without a trace.
It's so unlike her not to be there.
Alison Parrott is 4'10", weighs 75 pounds, has blonde hair and green eyes.
Sheer panic. It wasn't real.
Police believe she is the victim of a very well-laid trap.
It was a very high-profile case. We're after this guy, and we're going to get him.
Here's Crime Beat reporter Karen Lieberman with the story of Alison Parrott, leader of the pack.
At 11 years old, Alison Parrott was already competing at top-level cross-country track meets.
She became good at running because she trained hard. So she also had the determination and the self-discipline to keep at it.
She'd been chosen to represent in the 1,500-meter race at an upcoming track and field tournament in New Jersey. It was the summer of 1986. Alison answered a call to the family home in Midtown Toronto on the morning of July 25th.
They wanted to have a photograph taken with the team that were going to New Jersey. And she called me at work and asked my permission. We talked. She had to go down to Varsity Stadium.
She would have had no reason to be concerned. Alison was young, but she knew her way around the city.
We talked about how she would get there. She was used to going down to Varsity to train as well.
She attended École Gabriel Roy, a French elementary school downtown, and took public transit every day. Varsity Stadium was just 4 subway stops from home.
So it wasn't unfamiliar, but we went over it carefully. There weren't the kind of fears in the 80s that people have today. And we all encouraged independence.
Alison packed up her pink purse and blue gym bag and headed up to meet the photographer. She was supposed to be back home that afternoon. When her parents returned, she wasn't there.
It's so unlike her not to be there. It just intuitively felt that something serious was up.
Alison always knew to check in. This time, she didn't call and didn't return home. What are the next hours like?
I think shock, panic, sheer panic. And then the police was there, and then a couple of people start coming around who had heard.
All I can remember now is getting there and being there as the shock of Alison not being home.
Leslie Parrott's longtime friend Pamela McNamara remembers those initial hours.
And the whole, it was like, it wasn't real. That's what it was like.
Alison left home at 11:30 that Friday morning. Hours had passed. The sun was starting to go down. Darkness would soon set in.
We were all hoping, quite honestly, that Alison had gone to play at a friend's house and forgotten something. We were still positive on that evening.
Coming up, where is Allison? Welcome back. After getting a call to attend a photo shoot with her track team, Allison headed off alone to Varsity Stadium. Nobody had heard from her since. Now back to Karen Lieberman with Allison Perrott, leader of the pack.
It's fall at the Perrott family farm. The leaves are hanging on, but winter will come soon. Lots of cherries growing.
Yeah. So a weeping cherry.
Oh, wow.
The birds will love it.
Leslie Perrott's favorite season to follow, springtime. That's when a weeping cherry planted on her daughter's 21st birthday, the birch, will begin to bloom.
And then we have daffodils on both slopes and daffodils at the entranceway. And yeah, it's gorgeous. Look at all these leaves. They've all just come down.
At the center of the home is a tiny rocking chair fit for a small child. It was gifted to Allison on her first birthday.
The first day that Allison was born, I held her in my arms. I still remember this vividly. And I looked at her, and the thought that came to mind was she's very much her own person. And then she became a big sister, a bit of a bossy big sister. And that's exactly who Allison was. She was very spunky, very determined, filled with life, always laughing. But she was so much her own person.
There's a twinkle in Leslie's bright blue eyes as she remembers her daughter's childhood.
She loved her friends, and she was very much a natural leader. She was leader of the pack. Wherever she went, she was enthusing with people. She had some real natural leadership abilities. Allison would come in and out of my office a lot. She would chat to me on the phone a lot. Allison was very good at not breaking the rules. She might try to push the boundaries, but she would never break the rules. And part of the thing was always to check in, so we knew exactly where she was all the time.
Hours had passed, still no sign of Allison. Police had lots of questions, including for Allison's parents, Peter and Leslie.
That Friday evening, both Peter and I go to the police station for separate questioning.
Both were quickly ruled out as suspects.
And then there becomes a massive search.
Her parents and neighbors who gathered around them say Allison is an intelligent, cautious girl who wouldn't pick up with a stranger. Police believe she is the victim of a very well-laid trap. Somebody who was able to present themselves with such credentials that it became legitimate. And her line stands in line. We discussed her going down, and it just seemed that it was right for her to support the team in this way.
And so, who is it that sort of flags to you that there was no photo session?
Nobody at all. I mean, other than that we called some of the friends and did a photo session. So yes, I guess so. We called the coach, and the coach isn't aware of it. But none of the other girls who are going.
There was never a photo shoot. It was a ruse to get Allison alone. So who was this supposed sports photographer? Police began to scour the neighborhood, trying to locate the missing girl.
You have to keep looking and then go back and check and look again, and until you're perfectly sure in your own mind that one area is clear, and then you move on to the next area and follow whatever, be it small, whatever lead that you have.
Has there any leads at this point?
Nothing concrete, no. That's the frustrating part about it.
Tell me about the search.
The search was scary. It was well planned by friends. There was a group of people that took maps people. I can remember seeing a line down Yonge Street of all the people that had come to help and were waiting for their directions as to where to go.
Posters went up across the city, and police urged the public to keep a lookout.
The outpouring of people, of neighbors, of colleagues, and strangers was just huge.
Somebody was there all the time. Yeah. And they were there to either help in any way they could or go out and search or whatever.
Alison Parrish is 4'10", weighs 75 pounds, has blonde hair and green eyes, and was wearing a green shirt, blue shorts, and white shoes.
It seemed particularly clear this place that perhaps somebody had remarked and there was something about Alison that this person wanted.
Well, you can wait and you can vote. I think we're hopeful.
Hopeful, yet distraught. Leslie and Peter decided to release a video pleading for their daughter's safe return.
If you're the person who's taken our daughter, please bring her home and let her come home.
Sadly, it didn't go the right way.
2 days, and then, the police who had been in and out all weekend, and then the police come and we go upstairs and they give us the awful news.
Coming up, Alison's family grapples with this horrific news and the question, who did this? Welcome back. For 2 days, police searched the city for Alison. She left home on July 25th after receiving a phone call about a photo shoot. But there was no such photo session. Here's Karen Lieberman with the story of Alison Perrott, leader of the pack.
Police say 2 small boys discovered Alison Perrott's body last night along the Humber River.
You're grateful that you're here so quickly. I don't know if one could have endured that a longer period of not knowing.
Police combed the riverbank for any clue that might lead to Alison's killer.
We have the inner perimeter sealed off. We're doing a very minute and thorough search of that area, and then we have a greater perimeter that we're doing a grid search on. And so I can't comment on what we've come up with so far. We're just really right into the meat of the search right now.
Tips were flooding in from the public. There had been sightings of Alison on the subway the day she went missing, but no description of the suspect.
All it takes is one call from somebody out there, and just the right call, and that's it. And usually, these types of cases, that's how they are broken.
2 hotlines were set up for information that might lead to the killer. A person who claimed to be a sports photographer who lured Alison from her home. Someone who knew she was a runner and had been training for an event the following week.
Well, we've got some information, and they are chasing up various leads and information they get in relation to people that may have been involved in track clubs and things, but really nothing that we want to thoroughly discuss at this time. No, not at this time. What about these various reports of the cause of death, strangulation, asphyxiation? What are you saying about that? Well, what I'm saying about the cause of death is asphyxiation.
Police confirmed that Alison's cause of death was asphyxiation. Reporters pushed for more.
There's a rumor going around that she was brutally raped. I have no response to make to that.
The hope was that anyone, had seen Alison with her abductor. Outside Varsity Stadium, pamphlets were handed out with Alison's picture and description, and help came from unusual places.
I've had many calls yesterday from ex-cons, and they are trying to assess. They don't tolerate this sort of thing either.
Investigators began to uncover evidence. Police started to reveal the disturbing details of just what happened to Alison Perrott. A crime so repulsive, even homicide detectives were rattled.
I'm finding it more and more sickening all the time. I really am. Because, after 7 years in the homicide, you would think, well, maybe you can sort of
Her naked body found face down in Kingsmill Park in the city's West End.
I've tried not to spend a lot of time there. I call it the black hole, because one can never actually know exactly how all this went down. And so the imagination can be a wicked thing.
Allison suffered a wicked fate, but who could be so evil? Police reached out to the FBI in an effort to build a psychological profile of the killer and announced a sizable reward.
Reward of up to $50,000 for the arrest and conviction of the person responsible for the murder of Alison Turlough. We have to find some way of triggering a response from the public who may inadvertently not realize that they watched or saw something going down.
As police proceeded with their investigation, the Perrots prepared to bury their daughter. Just 2 blocks from the stadium, family and friends gathered for Alison's funeral.
This is a memorial service, and we have come to it and gathered here today to give thanks for the life of Alison Turlough.
Outside the church, dozens of police officers in uniform and plain clothes scanned the crowd, should the killer be among them.
The quality of her spirit is reflected in her conduct the night before she was violated. A dear friend and neighbor had lost their family pet dog, and Alison took it upon herself to prepare and distribute pamphlets seeking that wee dog. Just 24 hours later, posters would be distributed seeking the missing Alice.
Family came from everywhere.
My company flew in my parents and my brother and Peter's nephew from Australia.
One of the many in attendance, Janet Jessup, the mother of a 9-year-old girl who was murdered under similar circumstances almost 2 years before.
Well, it certainly has brought a lot of memories back for the 3 of us. And it was a beautiful service, and we certainly know where Mr. and Mrs. Turlough are at. And I've just said a few words with both of them. And I hope, we're going to help each other, because this has to be stopped somehow.
As mourners left the service and police pressed on, hours turned into days, days turned into weeks, and still no arrest.
My husband had gone back to work, sitting alone at home by myself all day. I couldn't imagine anything more terrible. Just left with my own thoughts.
Leslie returned to work, desperate for a distraction.
I went back to work and walking around the office and saying hello to everybody. It was always important to me that the person be found. It was not going to bring Alison back, but it was critically important so there wouldn't be any more Alisons.
I was called at home by one of the lead homicide investigators, then Staff Sergeant Ken Sanzura, and asked if I would join a task force. So I went for what was to be 2 weeks. We felt we would have a resolution very quickly.
2 weeks became 1 year. Steve Irwin, now an inspector with the Toronto Police Service, then a rookie. Just 4 years out of police college, he was the most junior on the homicide team.
It was a very high-profile case.
Police received more public response to the Perrott case than any other murder investigation before it. And they had a new tool to help.
And a very sophisticated new computer system to find the person who abducted Alison from her home on July 25th.
The computer program was designed to sift through hundreds of tips that police had received. While it wouldn't identify who the abductor was, it would save time for investigators narrowing down the suspects.
The retrieval of information is much quicker.
Irwin responded to countless calls from the public. He recalls one, in particular, from a woman who would become a witness.
And this woman was with her two children. One of them was a daughter who was about the same age. What was very interesting in that particular call was she was challenged that the poster didn't represent what she recalled Allison wearing, which was actually accurate. There was some misinformation on the original poster, and the color of the shirt was significant, which gave that particular witness more credibility. And that helped us with timing for when Allison actually got on the subway. Because this woman who I eventually interviewed months later had kept the transfer ticket from when she got on at York Mills. So that really helped us to track the path and steps that Allison had taken.
Allison could have been abducted anywhere en route to Varsity Stadium. So these types of tips were significant in the investigation, one that would prove complicated even in simpler times.
We didn't have a lot of surveillance cameras. We didn't have DNA. It was so unusual for this type of luring, abduction, sexual assault, and murder. There was a belief that we should be able to solve this much quicker. And obviously we were not able to. It became more and more challenging.
Information suggested Allison met her killer on the northwest corner of Varsity Stadium, across the street from a Royal Bank, which was equipped with 3 surveillance cameras.
One was not working, the other one had been opened when it was reloaded with old film and was overexposed. And then there was a third film that caught what we believe is the image of Allison that was walking by.
It was a breakthrough in the case. A single image in black and white, no head, feet barely visible. But Irwin wanted more.
Colorization had just come out within a few years of 1986, where they took old black and white movies and colorized them. So I actually reached out, that was a company here in Toronto, and reached out to them to say, so if I gave you a palette of colors, could you give me a sense of what colors, even though it's a black and white film, in an effort again to try and substantiate that in fact was Allison.
Confirmation Allison had made it to the stadium. So who did she meet up with?
Next, a suspect and a first-degree murder charge. Investigators have confirmed that Allison did arrive at the stadium. They must now determine what happened next.
We looked in the neighborhood. We looked, obviously, in the area of Varsity Stadium. We looked at people associated to her school at the running club that she was part of. We looked at track meets that she had been at, and looked for other victims, young girls mostly, that had been pursued by what I would say was potential sex offenders. And so there were many, many, many different angles that we were looking at. In this particular case, with her, there were so many potential places that this person could have come across her.
Allison's killer had done more than just come across her. He likely first spotted her at the stadium. He tracked her for weeks.
We canvassed and found other Parrots that spelled their name in the same way, who had got calls looking for Allison, and they stretched beyond Toronto proper.
It was January 1987. Investigators were honing in on a man who spoke with her weeks before her murder.
On June 7th, 1986, at the Appleton Cup, which was held at York University, at a track meet where Allison was a participant. A male, the only description we have is he's a male, like 30 to 35 years of age, dressed in a tracksuit, came up and had some conversation with her, and this was around lunchtime.
The path the killer took was becoming clearer. It was one of the largest murder investigations in Canada. But with dwindling resources, the task force had been reduced to a handful of officers. Soon, Steve Irwin would become a permanent investigator in the newly formed Sexual Assault Squad, put in place to solve the case of the unknown Scarborough rapist. A man who'd been preying on dozens of women in a suburb of Toronto. It would be DNA, brand new to Canada, that would crack that high-profile case.
Eventually, DNA was what identified Paul Bernardo in the Scarborough rape case. As that was now, he was before the courts and charged, I actually asked to leave sexual assault to go work at intelligence, and it was so that I could work for one of those original homicide investigators and get out the exhibits from Allison's case, submit them to Center of Forensic Sciences, and see if we could develop a DNA profile.
It was the success of DNA in the Bernardo case that sent Irwin digging into other unsolved murders that had been sexually motivated. Cases from his time on the homicide squad, like Alison Perrott.
I say I did hate crimes by day and bloodings by night as we started to collect samples so that we could have DNA for in Allison's case. With Allison's case, it was not a great sample that we had. Basically, it would take 2 weeks for each level to process. So the first level we got helped us in that we could start to eliminate people. 2 weeks later, we get the second level, and that meant we could eliminate more people. 2 weeks later, the third level then gave us the opportunity to start to actually identify who it would be. The fourth level started to make it mathematically that you had the right person. The fifth is the maximum. And in her case, we got actually all five from a very, very small sample.
It meant every 2 weeks, a large pool of possible suspects would become smaller.
We could start to say to Leslie and Peter Perrott, hey, we can eliminate some of these people, which we did. And they might not have to have in the back of their mind wondering if it was someone, a neighbor, an old friend, or someone from a sports club, a parent of another child, and start to answer unanswered questions.
Irwin was desperate to find Allison's killer. For him, it was personal.
His dad had been killed in Jury, and he was really determined, and I think he had a lot of empathy for our son as well, having been through something very similar in his life.
He would continue to pursue the question that had been haunting the Perrotts for years by that point. Who killed Allison? As her family waited for answers and an arrest, almost 10 years had passed.
Every year it doesn't get any easier. The time leading up to today is very difficult. And then I become totally preoccupied. But that's nothing compared to what she went through.
Leslie pleaded, just like the day after her daughter disappeared.
Look into your heart. Look at how you would feel if the person that you have the tiniest suspicion about were ever to hurt another child.
Allison's family had a reason to hold out hope. Police were finally getting closer.
This individual certainly left us with a fair number of clues about him and what he knew of Allison. And certainly with modern technology, the development of DNA is definitely an asset to us.
10 long years of waiting, the break everyone had been waiting for.
You get a call at 7:30 or so in the morning. A friend that the police wanted to come round right away, and we of course were getting ready to go to work, but it seemed like we shouldn't go to work. And they come round and they tell us that there is an arrest happening at that time.
Francis Roy covered his head with his suit jacket as he was driven to the downtown courthouse. The appearance by the ponytailed suspect lasted less than a minute.
outside Francis Carl Roy's West End home.
Well, I was stunned. I was just stunned, that's all. Just absolutely stunned.
I saw him all the time. It's like he was one of our neighbors. He used to walk around, walk his dog, go for a jog.
At the courthouse, this request from Roy's lawyer.
All I'd ask is that the media and the public remember he's charged, he's not convicted. Keep that distinction in mind. Remember that he's presumed innocent, and ask you to wait before you form any judgments.
Francis Carl Roy charged with the first-degree murder of Alison Perrott.
I think there was a sense of relief. And I don't know if immediately, but it's now what next?
The trial.
The trial. And the trial actually didn't happen for another 3 years.
Coming up, a disturbing story from the man charged with Alison's murder. 10 years after Alison was murdered, the trial finally gets underway. And Alison's story inspires a generation of children. Now back to Karen Lieberman with the conclusion of Alison Perrott, leader of the pack.
So who was this man now charged with Alison's murder?
He had come to our attention. He had a history of sex offenses, convicted sex offender, had gone out west. The RCMP had reached into us as he came up in some investigations there. They sort of knocked on the door and said, hey, he's still out here. Have you looked at him?
Information from those cases was added to a new computer system which allows police across the country to share data about violent crime investigations.
At that point, the case was turned over to homicide. They did get a cast off, something he touched.
For 2 weeks, police had waited for an opportunity to get that cast off, a sample of Roy's DNA.
And that was what was the beginning of identifying him.
The critical piece of evidence would be a discarded cigarette butt. As police tested the DNA and gathered their final bits of evidence, Alison's family struggled just to get through each day.
There were times that I felt life was not worth living. I remember one Sunday afternoon crawling into my bed and weeping because I always was quite careful not to do it around our son. And he came with like a little honing device and found me and said, I'm so sorry. Never wanted you to see me like this. And he said, okay, you're a mom. I understand. And he, more than anyone else, was the absolute reason to keep going, whatever it cost me. That in the midst of all this evil, love kept shining through, and that's really what kept me going.
"13 years since Alison's murder, the Perrotts begin to relive the horror of her death as the trial for Francis Carl Roy begins.
That was the first time we saw the perpetrator.
The court heard Roy was a shop clerk, also a runner. Some recall him carrying a camera. He pleaded not guilty to Alison's murder, making a shocking claim to explain the DNA evidence found in her body, which matched his semen.
Guilty of something, but perhaps not guilty of first-degree murder. I made a wrong turn. Yeah, and I did something stupid. Yeah, and you saw something. Right? I may have saw something and did something stupid.
He said he came across the young girl's body in Kingsmill Park while out for a jog. He stopped to urinate. He claimed there had been semen on his hand, having masturbated earlier that day, and when he saw the corpse, he violated it with his finger.
This is what Francis Roy looked like 13 years ago when 11-year-old Alison Perrott was lured from her home, raped, and murdered.
Roy's testimony wasn't the only element of doubt presented.
Bill Owen, a wheel train driver with the TTC.
The defense brought forth 3 witnesses who told the court they The jury listened for days, but there was something jurors did not hear.
The judge decided that what we call similar fact evidence in this case, that he had raped 2 young women before, and one was there to testify, that evidence should not be allowed into the court. To this day, I'm still baffled. Why somebody should be standing in the prisoner's box without a jury, able to understand the truth about that person, not only as Alison's mum, but as a member of our society. I feel very ashamed and angry.
Francis Carl Roy had been on parole at the time of Alison's murder. He had been convicted twice for raping teenage girls he had lured away from public places with stories that seemed credible. The assaults happened in wooded areas. It was hard to ignore the similarities with Alison's case.
Sadly, the justice system failed to protect Alison in the first place. There were convictions that were reduced. There was parole that was reduced and not well supervised.
The Perrots pleaded for change, but the law remained the same. If evidence of a prior conviction could do more to prejudice an accused person's right to a fair trial, the judge can exclude it.
Juries are there as representatives of common sense. And common sense, when a similar crime has been committed before, it's only common sense that makes part of why that person should be guilty.
Despite the seeds of doubt, the jury did not believe Roy's defense.
After 6 excruciating days of deliberations, the jury convicted 41-year-old Francis Carl Roy of first-degree murder in Alison's death.
Sentenced to life in prison, no chance of parole for 25 years. Leslie remembers vividly the day the decision was handed down, but she recalls it mattered less to her.
Nothing would bring her back, so yes, I was tremendously pleased that justice had been done. I was not elated like everyone else, because I still am left with the hugest hole in my heart. And so there was no joy.
In what would be her last time before the crush of cameras, Leslie took the focus off the now convicted killer and placed it back on her Alison.
But Alison was one of these people that had the ability to make a huge difference in this world. It is only so sad that difference had to be made in her death and not in her life.
The leaves are falling from the trees at the Perrott family farm. Life is peaceful, quiet. There are reminders of Alison frozen in time. An 11-year-old girl, a lover of life, a friend, a big sister, a runner, a child who liked to laugh, a daughter whose absence is always present, never far away. She is marked by the trees in the garden.
There's one tree of copper birch that on the first anniversary of Alison's death, neighbors and friends got together and planted a tree. And then there's another tree that is a weeping cherry in the middle of the garden that we planted on her, what would have been her 21st birthday. So they're both quite mature trees now.
Once a cottage to visit on holidays and weekends, Leslie now spends most of her time with her husband Peter up at the farm. The tiny rocking chair, the pictures on the walls, the trees marking her life.